I never should have left my room that night. My sister Gabriella's constant worrying had turned our family villa into a cage, and I just needed to breathe. I escaped into the slick Naples streets, looking only for a moment of quiet freedom. Rain made the neon signs smear across the wet stones. I had no business being behind the Il Corvonero Club. I was just following a stray cat. It sounds foolish, I know, but it was a skinny orange thing, a ghost of a pet I had in childhood, back when our world was whole. It was before the crash that took our parents and made Gabriella my guardian. The alley reeked of rot and iron. My simple white dress was soaked through, clinging to me as a cold reminder of how utterly alone I was. I should have gone home, but the cat slipped through a dark doorway. My own stubbornness pushed me forward. That is when I heard the noises. The sickening thud of a fist meeting bone, a low groan of pain, the heavy scrape of a body being dragged across the concrete. I froze instantly. My back was pressed hard against the cold brick wall. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs, so loud I was sure they could hear it. I risked a glance around the corner. Two men were holding up a third. His face was a ruin of blood and swollen flesh. Standing before them was the most handsome devil I had ever seen, smoke curling from his cigarette. Dario Santo. I knew that name. Everyone in Naples knew it. He was a legend. He had taken the old Santori crime family and built it into a modern empire. He was 35 years of brilliant cruelty in a perfect suit. He took a final drag, then pressed the glowing end of the cigarette into the broken man's forehead. A raw scream ripped through the alley, and my legs gave out. "You stole from me, Carmine." Da'Ario's voice was like silk stretched over a razor. "I do not allow thieves to live well. Please, I can get it back. Your debt will be paid in other ways." He gave his men a small nod. I did not wait to see what that meant. I spun to run and slammed right into a solid chest. It was not a wall. It was a huge, scarred man with empty eyes. His hand clamped onto my arm like a steel trap. "Boss," he called out, "we have a witness." Everything stopped. Dario turned his head with a chilling slowness. When his dark eyes met mine, the entire world seemed to stop breathing. The rain felt like it hung still in the air. The shadows deepened around us. He moved toward me with the fluid grace of a panther closing in on its prey. He stopped so close that I could smell his cologne, a sharp scent of citrus and pure danger. "What is this?" he murmured. I could not speak. My body screamed at me to run, but the giant, whose name I would later learn was Marco, held me tight. Dario lifted my chin with a single finger. The touch felt like a brand on my skin. "You are trembling, little flower." His famous smirk played on his lips. "Is it the cold, or are you afraid?" "Both," I managed to breathe. He let out a low, dark laugh that vibrated straight through me. "You are honest. I can appreciate that." He studied my face, his gaze so intense it felt like he was memorizing every part of me. "Tell me your name." "Ravenna." The word was a faint sound. "Ravenna Fior." I did not see a thing. The lie was pathetic. He let his hand fall. "You saw all of it. That creates a problem." A spike of pure terror shot through my chest. "Please, I will not say anything to anyone. I swear." He seemed to enjoy my desperation. "Your life." "Yes, we should discuss that." He began to circle me, slow and deliberate. His eyes followed me like a physical touch. "You are not from this world," he said. "You are too clean, too untouched." That last word hit me like a blow. "I have never been touched." The words fell out of my mouth before I could stop them. I immediately wished I could pull them back. Panic was making me a fool. Dario stopped his circle. His smirk grew wider. "Never. Not in that way." "I just meant—" I started to ramble. "I do not belong here. This is not for me. I am no one. Just let me go home. I will forget all of it." "No. The single word was final. He stepped in again, so near I could see tiny gold flecks in his dark eyes. This is what will happen now, Ravenna Fior. You will give me your phone. My hand shook as I pulled it from my pocket. He took it and passed it to Marco. Then you will get into my car. You and I will have a conversation. After that, I will decide what to do with you. And if I say no? His smirk turned to ice. Then Marco will convince you. I do not believe you would like that. Would you? I looked at Marco, then at the bleeding shape of Carmine moaning on the wet ground. The alley felt like my own grave. No, I whispered. Good girl. He placed his hand on the small of my back. It was an act of pure ownership as he guided me toward a black Mercedes at the end of the alley. The heat from his touch burned right through my dress. Marco opened the car door. I got in, sinking into leather that cost more than everything I had ever owned. A single thought consumed me. My life is over. But then Dario slid in beside me, his leg pressed against mine. He leaned in, his voice a low rumble in my ear. Do not be scared, little flower. For you, I will break every rule. In that instant, I understood a terrible truth. My life had not ended. It was now simply owned by a monster. And God help me, a small part of me was desperate to learn the cost. If you feel yourself being pulled into Dario's dark world, if you need to know what becomes of Ravenna, then subscribe now. This story is about to get much darker, and you will not want to look away. The car was filled with the smell of rich leather and absolute control. Dario said nothing as his driver navigated the rain-slicked streets. He just watched me with an intense gaze, like I was a puzzle he was determined to solve. I stared at my hands in my lap, trying to calm my breathing. It was impossible. We arrived at a tower of dark glass and shadow that pierced the sky. It loomed over the harbor like a cruel, jagged crown. This is my home, Dario said. His words sounded like a prison sentence. Marco opened my door. I knew I had no choice but to obey. I followed Dario into the building. The lobby was a vast, cold space made of marble and fear. Men in sharp suits stood guard, nodding as Dario passed. The woman at the reception desk intentionally avoided eye contact. In this place, everyone knew their position in the food chain. I was about to discover mine. The elevator ride to the top floor felt like being sealed in a tomb. Dario stood so close, his presence seemed to steal all the oxygen from the small space. I could feel the heat radiating from his body. I heard his slow, even breathing while my own was fast and panicked. Relax, he said, his voice low. I do not bite, unless you ask me to. Heat rushed to my face. The doors slid open to a penthouse that looked like a monument to sin. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the entire Bay of Naples, its lights like diamonds scattered on black velvet. The furniture was all dark wood and black leather. The paintings on the wall were worth more than I could imagine. Sit, Dario commanded, gesturing to a sofa. I did as I was told. He poured a golden-brown liquid from a crystal decanter into 2 glasses. I do not drink, I whispered. Tonight, you do. He put the glass into my hand. It will calm your nerves. I took a hesitant sip. The whiskey burned a path down my throat, but he was right. It did help. Dario settled into a large armchair across from me, his posture one of total command, and he just observed me. So, he finally said, Ravenna Fior, 23 years old. You share a villa outside the city with your sister Gabriella. A car accident took your parents 7 years ago. You work in a bookstore. You like poetry. You have never been with a man. The blood froze in my veins. How do you know all that? In this city, I know everything about everyone. He swirled the amber liquid in his glass. But you are an anomaly. You do not belong to a rival family. You have no link to my world. Which brings us to the real question. What were you doing in the alley behind my club? I already told you. I was following a cat. The truth, Ravenna. His voice dropped to a low rumble that sent a tremor through my entire body. That is the truth. My voice was small and weak. I know how it sounds, but I swear it. I believe you. I looked up at him, stunned. What? I believe you. He leaned forward, placing his elbows on his knees. That is what makes this situation so ideal. You stumbled into my world by accident. You saw something that was never meant for your eyes. And now, you are here in my home, with my whiskey in your hand, and not a single person knows where you are. The enormity of my predicament crashed down on me. My sister Gabriella, she will search for me. Will she? Dario raised his phone. It was my phone. He turned the screen toward me. I saw a text sent to Gabriella from my number, telling her not to wait up because I was staying at a friend's house. You cannot do this. I can. And I already have. He set the phone on the table between us. From this moment on, Ravina, your old world is gone. Your new life is here, with me, and I will be the one who decides what that life looks like. What are my choices? The question came out sounding braver than I felt. That smirk returned to his lips. I like your spirit. Let us see. Option 1. You walk out of here. You promise me you will forget everything you saw tonight. But that would require me to trust you. Trust that you will not go to the police. Trust that you will keep silent. And I must be clear, little flower. I am not a man who trusts. Option 2 is you stay here. The word hung in the air. Stay, I repeated. And be what? A prisoner. Be mine. My heart slammed against my ribs, skipped a beat, then began to race. I do not understand. Are you certain? He rose and moved toward me with the predatory grace of a big cat. You appeared in my life just as I was looking for something different. Someone who is separate from my world, someone I can shape, someone unspoiled. He knelt in front of me, his eyes now level with mine. Someone whose first touch will be mine. A strange heat spread across my skin. It was fear, but it was tangled with something else, something I refused to acknowledge. I am not interested, I managed to say, my voice trembling. Liar. His hand came to rest on my knee. The contact was light, but it felt like it burned right through the fabric. Your body betrays you. Your pupils are wide. Your breathing is rapid and shallow. You are terrified, of course. But you are also curious. You are insane. I am powerful. There is a difference. His hand slid higher up my thigh. The movement was small, but it made his point perfectly. This is my offer, Ravina. I need a companion for social events, for business dinners, for situations where having a beautiful, innocent woman by my side sends a clear message to my enemies. I am not a thing to be used. No, you are an asset. And I always protect my assets. His eyes held mine. Your sister, she has problems, does she not? The medical bills from your mother's illness. The bank will take the house in 3 months. You work yourself to exhaustion at that shop, but you are still drowning. How could he know the details of our struggle? All of it? I can erase all of that, Dario said. With just one phone call. Your sister will be free. Your financial worries will disappear. The only thing required of you is your consent. And if I refuse? His hand fell from my leg. He stood and walked back to the window, gazing out at the city. Then you are free to leave this place tonight. Tomorrow, the people Gabriella owes money to will stop being polite. The little bookstore where you work could have an accident. Your safe, simple life will fall apart. You are threatening my family. I am showing you how the world works. He turned, and the city lights framed him, making him look like a dark judge. This world is cruel, Ravenna. I am offering you a fortress. I am offering you safety and a life of wealth you cannot imagine. I only ask for your time, your company, and your obedience. For how long? Until I say it is over. It was a perfect trap, a golden cage. But I thought of Gabby. I pictured the stacks of bills and saw the exhaustion on her face every morning. Then I spoke. I need time to think about this. You have 60 seconds. That is not fair. I have never claimed to be a fair man. 50 seconds. My mind was a hurricane of chaos. This could not be happening. It was insane. I had to run. I had to call someone for help. Then I saw Gabby's face. I remembered everything she sacrificed for me and heard the panic in her voice when the debt collectors called. If I agree, a voice I barely recognized as my own said, I need a promise. You will never, ever hurt my sister. You have my word, and I will not. The words stuck in my throat. Share your bed. His smile was like a wolf's. Not unless you beg me for it. Shame burned across my face. That will never happen. We will see. He stepped forward and held out his hand. Do we have a deal, Ravina Fior? I stared at his hand. It was strong and scarred, marked by a violence I could feel but could not see. This was it. The choice that would change everything, with no way back. I placed my hand in his. We have a deal. His grip tightened around my fingers, and in my head, I heard a lock click shut. Welcome to my world, little flower, Dario whispered as he pulled me to my feet. I promise you, your life will never be the same. He was right. Dear God, he was so right. I woke up in a bed softer than a cloud, but it was the most dangerous place on earth. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then everything rushed back. The deal, this penthouse, the devil with black eyes who now owned me. I sat bolt upright, my heart pounding. The room was huge, decorated in shades of gray and black. The art on the walls made violence look beautiful. Massive windows showed the city of Naples waking up below. The morning sun turned the bay into liquid gold. A note sat on the nightstand, the handwriting sharp and confident. Your clothes are in the closet. Breakfast is at 8. Do not make me come find you. D. I looked at my phone. 7:47. I had 13 minutes. The closet was the size of my old bedroom, and it was completely full. It held designer dresses, casual clothes, and shoes that cost more than I made in 6 months. Everything was my size. He had planned for this. He knew I would say yes. His arrogance should have made me angry. Instead, a chill of fear ran through me. I chose the simplest things I could find, black pants and a cream silk shirt, and tried to look presentable. The woman in the mirror was not me. She was someone who belonged in this world of money and dangerous men. I hated how elegant I looked. At exactly 8 o'clock, I found the dining room. Dario sat at the head of a long table that could seat 12 people. He was focused on a tablet and did not look up. Sit. I took the chair to his right. Food appeared from nowhere. There were pastries, fresh fruit, espresso, and other dishes I had never seen before. A woman in a crisp uniform set everything down and left without a sound. Eat, Dario commanded, his eyes never leaving the screen. I am not hungry. You will eat. We have a busy day. Doing what? He finally looked up. God, his eyes were so intense. I am showing you your new life. He stood and buttoned his perfect charcoal gray jacket. He held out his hand. Come. In the elevator going down to the garage, I found my voice. I need to call my sister. She will be worried. It is already handled. I sent Marco with a message for her. It says you are visiting a friend in Rome for a few days. She thinks you are finally taking her advice to have some fun. You cannot just do that. I can. And I did. The elevator doors opened to a garage filled with cars that looked like they belonged in a museum. He led me to a low black Maserati. Get in. Where are we going? We are going shopping. I do not need anything. Yes, you do. He held the door for me. After I got inside, he shut it. The heavy sound was final. Driving through Naples felt like a strange dream. Dario drove like he lived, fast and confident, daring anyone to get in his path. I gripped the seat and tried not to show him I was afraid. Relax, he said, and I could hear the amusement in his voice. I have never had an accident. There is a first time for everything, not for me. We pulled up to a store that clearly catered to the very rich. The staff greeted Dario by name, then their eyes moved to me, full of curiosity. "This is Ravenna," Dario announced, his hand resting on the small of my back in a clear gesture of ownership. "She needs an entirely new wardrobe. Dresses, casual clothes, jewelry. Do not worry about the price." Of course, they understood perfectly. For the next 2 hours they treated me like a doll. I was measured, dressed, and undressed again and again. Dario watched from a leather chair. He drank espresso and never took his sharp, judging eyes off me. I emerged in a black evening gown that molded to my body. His gaze burned into me, sharp and possessive. He pointed. "That one. Then the red one, and the emerald one." "This is just too much," I protested. "Nothing is excessive for what is mine." He stood and crossed the space between us. The store employees vanished, suddenly busy with other things. "You will be seen with me in public, Ravenna. At dinners, galas, and important meetings. You need to look the part." "The part of what?" "Your possession." The word slipped out before I could catch it. Dario's hand shot out, a blur of motion, and cupped my chin. The pressure was not painful, but it was firm enough to send a clear message. "Never speak of yourself that way again. You are not my possession. You are in my care. There is a world of difference." "Is there really?" "Yes." His thumb traced my lower lip, a gentle stroke. "If you were my possession, I would have already claimed you. But with you, I am being patient." A storm of heat, rage, and something much darker churned inside me. I jerked away from him. "I am not some toy. No, you are a blade." He cornered me, his body trapping me against a tall mirror. "And I will teach you how to be wielded." "I do not understand." "You will soon enough." His warm breath ghosted across my ear. "Tonight, you will join me for a business dinner. There will be powerful men there, dangerous men. Your only task is to sit by my side, look beautiful, and say nothing." He asked if I could manage that. My pride screamed to refuse. My will to live forced me to agree. "Good girl." He took a step back, breaking the spell. "We will take all of them, deliver them to my residence." The rest of the day was a blur. We visited a jeweler. Dario draped me in diamonds, like I was a thing to be decorated. After that, a salon. They styled my hair and painted my face until a stranger looked back at me, a woman who held power. I was utterly drained when we returned to his penthouse apartment. "Rest," Dario ordered. "We leave at 7. I went to my room. It was beginning to feel like my room, a space where I somehow fit. I collapsed onto the bed. What did I just do? I traded myself to a monster to save my sister. I left my simple life behind for this new world. I was supposed to feel like a captive, but I saw my reflection in the dark window pane. I wore clothes that cost more than my rent for an entire year. My skin still tingled where he had touched me. A piece of me felt something unfamiliar. Awake. For the first time in 7 years of misery and hardship, I felt truly awake. I felt awake. And that sensation terrified me more than Dario ever could. Post your thoughts. If you were in Ravenna's shoes and walked into Dario's life, would you take the same bargain, or would you have fled? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. The restaurant was the kind of establishment where menus did not have prices. If you had to ask how much something cost, you did not belong there. We arrived in Dario's Maserati. I could sense every eye on us. The parking attendant, the doormen, the other patrons. They all stared as Dario exited the car and then helped me out. His hand settled on the small of my back, a gesture that staked his claim. I wore the emerald dress. It made my eyes look like a turbulent sea, and my skin seemed to glow. Dario had chosen it for me. He had studied me in a way that made me feel naked, even when I was fully clothed. "Remember," he murmured as we walked inside, "you are mine tonight. You should act accordingly." What is that supposed to mean? It means you do not flinch when I touch you. You pay attention when I speak. His grip on my waist tightened. When other men stare at you, your eyes will find only me. We were escorted to a private dining room at the back before I could form a reply. 3 men were waiting. They were all older than Dario. Each one wore a suit that was worth a small fortune, with faces made hard from years of committing terrible acts. "Dario," said the man at the head of the table. He rose to his feet. He had silver hair, piercing eyes, and a smile that held no warmth at all. "You are tardy. I am precisely on time, Vincenzo." Dario pulled out my chair before taking his own seat. The city traffic was heavy. Vincenzo's gaze shifted to me. "And who is this lovely creature?" "Ravenna Fior, my business partner." The way Dario pronounced that phrase made the truth obvious. I was his asset. The subject was closed. How charming! Vincenzo's cold smile widened. "I was not aware you were searching for a new partner." I was not. Not until I realized precisely what was absent from my life. You could have sliced the tension in the room with a dinner knife. The other 2 men introduced themselves as Carlo and Stefano. They both radiated the same kind of menace that seemed to cling to every man in this circle. I offered a polite smile. I kept my mouth shut. I concentrated on the simple act of breathing. Dinner was served. It was some elaborate French dish I could not identify. The men spoke around me, their words a dance of business hidden within casual conversation. They dropped hints about shipments and territories and men who had vanished without a trace. I hardly ate. I was intensely aware of Dario beside me. His leg pressed against mine under the table. His hand would occasionally come to rest on my thigh. The touch was both casual and possessive. "So, tell me, Dario," Vincenzo said, though his eyes were fixed on me. "Where did you unearth such an innocent little thing? She seems so pure." That word struck me like a physical blow. Dario's hand gave my thigh a warning squeeze. "Ravenna is with me now. I would hate for anyone to forget that." "Of course. Of course." Vincenzo raised his wineglass. "But you must admit, she is a departure from your usual type of woman. My tastes have evolved." "Have they? Or did you merely acquire a new toy?" The insult hung in the air between them. I felt Dario go perfectly still next to me. It was not a peaceful kind of quiet. It was the quiet of a hunter just before the strike. "Choose your next words carefully, old friend," Dario warned in a low tone. "You are starting to irritate me." "Am I?" Vincenzo's smile twisted into a cruel line. "My apologies. I am simply trying to understand why a man who breaks every rule is suddenly showing off a girl as if she matters. Unless," his eyes held a malicious gleam, "unless she is more than she appears. So tell me, Dario, what is her family name? What influence does she command?" "None." That single word silenced the entire room. "Absolutely none." Carlo sat up a little straighter. "Then what purpose does she serve?" I could feel every one of them staring at me. I felt like prey about to be devoured. Dario shifted his hand from my leg and covered my hand with his. He laced our fingers together right on the tabletop. The gesture was clear. "She is mine." "Her purpose," Dario said, his voice dropping into a deep and threatening register, "is whatever I decide it is. The same as everything else in this city." Vincenzo forced a laugh, but it sounded hollow. "You always were full of yourself. Your father would be so proud." "My father is in a grave." Dario's voice was cold enough to turn fire to ice. "And I am not him. That is why I am sitting at this table while he decomposes in a box." The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. The 3 other men went rigid. "We intended no disrespect," Stefano said. It was the first time he had spoken. "We are just curious about this new path your life is taking. My life is my own business." Dario rose to his feet, pulling me up alongside him. This dinner is over. Our business arrangement is terminated, Vincenzo. I will find new partners, ones who understand their place. Wait, Dario? Please. Vincenzo stood, and I saw genuine fear in his eyes. I am sorry. I crossed a line. Please, sit back down. We can discuss this. There is nothing left to discuss. Dario's arm wrapped around my waist. You showed contempt for something that belongs to me. That will not be forgiven. He guided me toward the door. As we passed Vincenzo, Dario paused. One last thing, he whispered. If I ever hear you speak Ravena's name again, if you so much as think of her for any reason other than staying away, I will cut out your tongue and mail it to your wife. Do you understand me? Vincenzo's face went white. Perfectly. Good. We were gone. The car ride home was utterly silent. Dario's jaw was a hard line, and his knuckles were pale as he gripped the steering wheel. I was too terrified to speak. But then we arrived at the penthouse. The elevator doors slid shut, sealing us in that small space, and I found my voice. You did not have to do that for me. Yes, I did. He turned to me, and the blaze in his eyes took my breath away. No one disrespects you, not ever. I do not care who they think they are. They were your business associates. They are nothing to me now. He stepped closer. You need to understand something, Raveena. When I call you mine, it is not a game. I do not say things I do not mean. You are under my protection. That means if anyone lays a hand on you, says a harsh word to you, or even looks at you incorrectly, they answer to me. Why? The word escaped me. Why would you care? I am just what? His hand came up to gently cup my face. You think you are nothing? You think I would destroy alliances that took years to build for no good reason? I do not understand. Then let me show you. He kissed me. It was not soft. It was not gentle. It was a kiss of possession, of raw hunger. His mouth came down on mine as if he were branding me his from the inside out. I should have pushed him away. I should have remembered this was all an arrangement, a facade. But my body betrayed me. My hands fisted his jacket. My lips parted for him. And a groan rumbled from his chest against my mouth, a sound that vibrated through my whole being. The elevator chimed. We pulled apart. Dario's eyes were like molten gold. Get inside. Now. I obeyed. Inside the apartment, he poured himself a drink with hands that trembled. I had only ever seen him with perfect composure. That was a mistake, he said. He refused to look at me. No, I replied. It was not. But it did happen. Yes. He finally turned to face me. Go to your room, Raveena, before I do something we will both regret. I fled. But I lay in bed that night. My lips were still burning from his kiss. My body still ached for his touch. And I finally knew the truth. I was no longer a captive in Dario's world. I was drowning in it. And I was not sure I wanted to be saved. For 3 days, I moved through a haze. Dario was different after that kiss. He was distant. He would be gone before I was awake and return late at night. He barely spoke to me, other than to instruct me on where I needed to go. One part of me was relieved. The other part, the part I hated, missed his presence. On the 4th day, everything shattered. I was jolted awake by shouting. It was Dario's voice, raw with fury, coming from another part of the penthouse. I slipped on a robe and followed the sound. He was in his office, pacing like a caged animal with a phone pressed to his ear. I do not care what it takes, he snarled into the phone. Find him, and bring him to me alive. He listened for a moment. Because I want to be the one who ends him, Marco. That is why. He slammed the phone down and then he noticed me standing there. What are you doing up? You were yelling. What is wrong? It is nothing for you to be concerned about. But I could see it in his eyes. Something was terribly wrong. Dario, I began. This is not your concern. He moved closer to me. For the first time, I saw something on his face I thought was impossible. Fear. It was not for himself. It was aimed at me. For me. Please. My voice was a faint whisper. I need you to tell me. His eyes held mine for a very long time. The words felt like they were torn from his soul. Nico Esposito. He is a rival. He knows about you now. My entire world froze. How? I made a grave error. Dario's hands clenched into tight fists. I should never have brought you to that dinner. I let them all see what you mean to me. And now Nico thinks he can get to me by getting to you. What happens to me now? It means you are in danger. He closed the distance between us until he stood directly before me. It means I must send you away from here, to somewhere safe. A place he will never be able to find you. No. This is not a discussion. I said no. I held my ground. You are the one who forced me into this world. You do not get to throw me away now that it has become difficult. Difficult? The laugh that escaped him held no joy. Ravenna, if Nico manages to get his hands on you, what he would do. He could not finish the thought. I will not allow that to happen. Then do not force me to go. Protect me here. You promised you would. You gave me your word. I am not able to protect you from this. The admission hung in the space between us like a physical weight. I am afraid too. My words were barely audible. But running away is not the answer. If his plan is to use me to wound you, he will find a way. At least here with you, I stand a fighting chance. Dario's jaw went rigid. You have too much faith in me. Maybe you should be with a man who deserves it. We stared at one another for a long second. The air between us crackled with tension and unspoken feelings. His phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his whole demeanor shifted. Stay in this room. Under no circumstances are you to leave the penthouse. Marco is standing guard outside your door. If a problem arises, you follow his lead. Is that clear? Where are you headed? I am going to end this. He was gone before I could say another word. The hours crawled by. I roamed the penthouse like a caged animal, tracking the sun's slow arc across the cityscape. Outside, Marco stood as a silent, unmovable guardian. I tried to eat, but the food was tasteless. I tried to read, but the words swam before my eyes. My mind was consumed with Dario, with where he had gone, what he was doing, and if he was safe. When had I started to care about his well-being? The sky was turning purple when the main entrance burst open. Dario strode in. My breathing stopped. His shirt was stained with blood, and his hands were coated in it. A smear of it marked his face. But he moved with a confident power that told me none of it belonged to him. It is over, Dario said. His voice was hollow and detached. Nico is gone. So is his crew. We are no longer in danger. A profound sense of relief flooded my system. Thank God. No. He held up a hand, silencing me. Do not thank God. Thank the fact that I put a bullet in his skull and watched the life drain out of him on a cold warehouse floor. That image should have horrified me. It should have sent me running. Instead, I found myself moving toward him. You are hurt, I said, finally seeing a cut on his cheek that I missed before. It is nothing. Let me clean it. Ravenna, please. Something in my tone made him relent. I led him to his bathroom of black stone and polished metal, where I wet a washcloth and carefully dabbed at the injury. We were so close I could feel the warmth of his breath on my cheek. You have no right to be this near me, Dario whispered. Not when I am like this. Like what? Covered in blood after ending a man's life. I am a monster, Ravenna. You should be terrified of me. I am, I admitted quietly, but not of you. His eyes locked onto mine. That makes you a fool. Maybe. I traced the cloth along his jawline, wiping away the crimson flecks. Or maybe I see something in you that you refuse to acknowledge. And what would that be? A man who just killed someone to keep me safe? I killed to protect my own assets. Liar. The word escaped me on a soft exhale. You were afraid. I saw it this morning. You were afraid for me. His hand shot out like a snake, his fingers wrapping around my wrist. Do not confuse protection with affection. Then explain why your hands are shaking. It was a nearly imperceptible tremor, but it was there. The aftershocks of violence, the weight of his actions, the fear he had carried all day. Ravenna, my name was a sharp warning. You need to leave this bathroom right now. Why? Because I am holding on to my self-control by a single fraying thread. And if you stay, if you keep looking at me that way, like what? Like you do not see me for the monster I am. I set the cloth on the counter and placed my hand flat against his chest, feeling the wild hammering of his heart beneath the ruined shirt. I should hate you, I whispered. You blackmailed me, trapped me, and destroyed the life I knew. Yes, but I do not. The thread snapped. Dario hauled me against him with a guttural growl, his lips capturing mine in a brutal kiss. It was nothing like the one in the elevator. This was starved and savage, as if he planned to devour me whole. I surrendered to it, the metallic tang of blood and danger mixing with a feeling that was terrifyingly close to desire. His hands were everywhere, tangled in my hair, circling my waist, sliding down to grip my hips, and press me firmly against his body. I could feel the hard evidence of his arousal against my stomach. Tell me to stop, he growled against my mouth. For God's sake, Ravenna, make me stop. No. He pulled back just enough to look at me, his eyes burning with a wild light. You do not understand what you are doing. Then show me. Something inside him broke. He swept me into his arms as if I weighed nothing at all. He carried me to his bedroom, a space I had never been allowed to enter. It was a room of dark woods and even darker promises. He laid me down on cool silk sheets and hovered over me. This is your final chance, he said, his voice deep and raw. After we cross this line, there is no turning back. You will be mine in every way that matters. I am already yours, I whispered. You made that certain the first night we met. Not like this. His hand traveled down my skin, leaving a trail of heat in its wake. I have wanted you since the second I found you trembling in that alley. I have fantasized about this. I have seen you in my sleep every single night. Then stop fantasizing. He pressed his lips to mine again, but this time with a slow deliberation, as if committing the moment to memory. His fingers found the tie on my robe, and then he paused. I have never been with anyone, I told him, hating the tremor in my words. I know. His smile was soft and real, a rare glimpse of the man behind the monster. I will be gentle with you, at first. The meaning behind those last two words sent a fresh wave of fire through me. He unwrapped my clothing with a slow reverence, as if I were something precious. When I was bare before him, he just stared. So beautiful, he murmured. Beautiful, and entirely mine. Yours, I replied. He removed his own clothes, which were stained with blood. My God, the sight of him stole my breath. He was built of carved muscle, covered in tattoos I had never seen, and marked with scars that told stories of the violence he had overcome. He covered my body with his own, the touch of our skin sending a shock through me. If this is painful, he whispered, moving into place, you tell me. I will stop. Do not stop. I pulled him closer. Do not ever stop. He entered me with a deliberate, agonizing slowness, his gaze locked on mine, watching for any hint of pain. There was a discomfort, a sharp, stretching burn, but beneath it was something else, a feeling that grew with each of his movements. Breathe, he commanded, his own breath catching. Just breathe, little flower. I did as he said, and with every inhale, every slow push, The pain dissolved into pure pleasure. Dario, I gasped. I know. I know. He kissed my throat, my jaw, and my mouth. You are perfect. So perfect. He increased his rhythm, pushing deeper, and I moved with him in perfect time. The world disappeared until it was just the two of us. Our bodies, our breaths, our quiet sounds of need. When my world shattered, it was like dying and being reborn in the same instant. I cried out his name as my fingers scraped down his back. He followed only seconds later, my name a sacred word on his lips as he collapsed against me. We stayed tangled together, hearts racing, our skins slick with sweat. No turning back, Dario finally said, his fingers tracing lazy circles on my hip. No, I agreed. No turning back. He held me tighter, and for the first time since my parents died, I felt safe. The idea that a killer's arms could be a sanctuary should have terrified me. But as I fell asleep in Dario's bed, marked by his touch and claimed by his body, I could not find an ounce of worry. I had stepped into the darkness and found my home. I woke up in an empty bed with a note resting on the pillow. I had to handle something. Marco will take you to your sister today. She has been asking about you. Do not tell her what is really going on. D. My sister. God, the thought of Gabriella had not even entered my mind for days. A wave of guilt washed over me. Marco drove me to the villa in complete silence, his scarred face giving nothing away. As we got closer, I saw Gabby in the garden, trimming her rose bushes like she did every morning. 2 hours, Marco said flatly. Then we have to go. I nodded and stepped out of the car. Ravina. Gabby's face lit up as soon as she saw me. She ran to me, pulling me into a hug that smelled like home and everything I had lost. Where have you been? You said you would be gone for a few days. It has been almost a week, I know. I am so sorry. I completely lost track of time. She pulled away, her sharp eyes studying my face. You look different. Different how? I cannot put my finger on it. You seem older, like something has changed you. Her gaze dropped to my neck, and I knew she saw the mark Dario had left there last night. Ravenna, who is he? Who? Do not play innocent with me. There is a man. It is written all over your face. She grabbed my hand, and I realized too late that I wore a bracelet that was not there a week ago. It was covered in diamonds and emeralds and was probably worth more than our house. What is going on, Gabby? I need you to tell me the truth. Now. I could not tell her. The weight of Dario's warning was still heavy on me, but this was my sister, the woman who raised me, who sacrificed for me, who loved me unconditionally. I met someone, I admitted. It is not simple. Not simple? How? Ravenna, please, you are scaring me. This is not you. Disappearing and then showing up with jewelry that costs a fortune. You look like you have not slept at all. I am fine. Are you? He is taking care of me. Taking care of you? Her voice grew sharp. What is that supposed to mean? What kind of trouble are you in? Before I could answer, her phone began to ring. She looked down at the screen and all the color left her face. What? What is it? The bank. They are calling to tell me our debts have been paid. All of them. The house loan, the medical bills, everything. They will not tell me who did it. She looked straight at me. Ravina, what did you do? I made a deal. With who? I could not speak. The words were stuck in my throat. Oh, God. Gabby sank onto the garden bench. Oh, God. Ravina, please tell me you did not. Please tell me you did not sell yourself to some rich man. It is not what you think. Then what is it? Explain it to me. Make me understand. You asked why I am covered in diamonds when I look like I have been devoured. It is because I was. Those words escaped me before I could stop them. I was consumed, claimed, and marked by a man. And I cannot feel any shame for it, Gabby. I know I am supposed to. I should despise him for trapping me, for doing this. But I feel the opposite. A long silence stretched between us before she finally whispered, "Who is he?" "Dario Centuri." His name was a weapon hanging in the air. The blood drained from Gabby's face, leaving it a sickly gray. "No. That is impossible. You have to tell me this is some sort of sick joke. Not Dario Centuri, not the head of the Mafia, not the one they call the rule breaker. Ravina, do you have any idea what you have done? I protected our family. We were drowning in debt. I was handling it. You were working yourself into an early grave," I shot back. "I refused to stand by and watch you collapse. So when he presented his offer, when he promised to wipe it all away, you sold your soul to a monster." "Maybe I did, but this monster always honors his bargains." Gabby jumped to her feet and started pacing, her hands trembling uncontrollably. "You have to get away from him right now. Today. I will figure out a way to handle the money. It is much too late for that. It is never too late." "Gabby," I said, taking her hands with mine. "I have fallen in love with him." The admission hung in the air, a shock to me as much as to her. "You cannot be," she breathed. "You have known him for only a single week. I know it sounds insane, but when I am with him, I feel completely alive. For the first time since Mom and Dad died, I am actually living, not just trying to stay afloat. He is a murderer, Ravina. I am aware of how dangerous he is. I know he has the power to destroy you. I truly understand." I met her gaze directly. "But I am certain I will shatter into a million pieces if I have to walk away from him now." Gabby stared at me as if I were a total stranger. And perhaps I was. "I cannot support this choice." Her tone was absolute. "I will not watch you ruin your life for a man like him. I am not asking for your support. I am only asking you to try to understand. I do not understand, and I never will." She ripped her hands from my grasp. "When this whole thing implodes, and I promise you it will, Ravenna, do not bother coming to me." Her words were like daggers. "Gabby, I think it is time for you to go. Please, just leave now before I say something I can never take back." And so she left. I had no other option. Marco drove me back to the penthouse in total silence. I stared out at the passing city lights as tears streamed down my face. When we arrived, Dario was there waiting in the living room. He took one look at me and his expression turned to ice. "What is wrong? She knows about the two of us. She knows all of it, and now she despises me." "She does not despise you." He pulled me into his arms. "She is only terrified for you." "It is not the same thing, is it not?" "Yes." He gently lifted my chin, forcing me to meet his eyes. "Do you have any regrets about this? About us?" I should have said yes. I should have accepted the way out he was offering me. Instead, I whispered, "No, I do not regret a thing. Not even after knowing what I am, and especially after knowing what you are." His kiss was soft and sweet, as if he thought I might break. "You are far too good for this world, Ravenna Fior. In that case, it is a good thing I have you to ruin me." That night, he proved exactly how right I was. And much later, as I lay safely in his arms, feeling branded and owned and his in every way, he murmured 3 words I almost missed. "I love you." 3 words that rearranged my entire universe. 3 words that determined my fate. I whispered them back to him. And in the darkness, I could have sworn I heard the sound of chains locking into place. They were not trapping me. They were binding us together forever. I want to ask you something. Would you choose a dangerous romance over a life of safety and routine? Leave your answer in the comments. Be honest. I was discovering that love does not erase the darkness. It just gives you the courage to dance with it. 2 weeks after we confessed our feelings, Dario integrated me more deeply into his world. I sat through business meetings, learning to recognize the violence that lurked behind a man's smile. I attended dinners where every pleasantry was a veiled threat. Some nights, he came home splattered with blood that was not his, and I learned how to clean his wounds without asking a single question. I was transforming into someone new, someone who could stand beside a monster and call him her love. But the past, as I was about to learn, never stays buried for long. It started with a package delivered to the penthouse. There were no return markings. Marco brought it to Dario during our breakfast, his face grim. "Boss, you need to see this." Dario sliced open the box and then froze. Inside lay a single, faded photograph. It was a picture of a young boy, around 8 years old, standing next to a man who looked like an older version of Dario. They were both smiling, but the man's hand was clamped on the boy's shoulder with too much force. "Who is that?" I asked. "My father." Dario's voice was as cold as a tombstone. "And me, the day before he tried to murder me." His words struck me like physical blows. "What?" He set the photograph down like it was poison. "I was 8 years old. He decided I was weak, too gentle. He took me to an abandoned warehouse, and he beat me until I was barely conscious. He said if I could not survive him, I could never survive in his world." A chilling horror crawled up my spine. "How did you escape?" "I survived. Obviously." His smile was empty of any warmth. "Marco's father found me. He saved my life and raised me alongside his own son. The day I turned 18, I went back to find my father. And I made sure he could never hurt another living soul again. You killed him. I executed him. The distinction was very important to him. For everything he did to me, to my mother, to every person his poison ever touched." I reached across the table and took his hand. "Why would somebody send this to you after all this time?" "Because they want me to remember. They want me to feel powerless." He stood up and began to pace the room. "This is a message, a warning." "From who?" Before he could answer, his phone began to ring. He looked down at the screen, and his entire expression shifted. I saw something I had never seen on his face before. It was fear. "What is it?" He took the call, and after a moment, his face lost all its color. "When?" There was a pause. "How many?" Another moment of silence. "I am coming now." He hung up and turned to me, his eyes suddenly hollow. "It is Gabriella. They have her." My whole world started to spin. "What? Who has her? When?" "An hour ago from the villa. They left a note." His hands were shaking. "They told me to come alone or she dies." "Oh my God. Oh my God. Gabby, this is my fault." Dario's voice was fractured. "They took her to get to me. They did this because of you. Because you are with me. Now anyone I care about is a target. Then we are going to get her back." "We?" He shook his head. "No, you are going to stay here with Marco where it is safe. That is my sister. And that is the very reason you are not going." He placed his hands on my shoulders. "I cannot protect both of you. If you were hurt because I was saving her, I do not care. I am going. Ravenna. She is all I have left. I am not losing her." Tears streamed down my face. "Please, Dario, let me come with you." He stared at me for a long time before he finally agreed. "Okay, but you will do exactly what I say. Do you understand me?" "Yes, I mean it. This is not a game. These men, whoever is controlling this, they want me dead, and they will use you both to achieve it." "I understand." He gave me a hard, fast kiss. "If I do not come back, Marco will get you away from here. Promise me you will run. Nothing is going to happen to you. Just make the promise. I promise." It was a lie. We both knew it, but he chose to believe it. The meeting point was an old factory on the outskirts of Naples, a place of rust and shattered glass that had been abandoned for decades. Dario brought 4 of his men. There was Marco and 3 others I knew from the penthouse. They were armed, they were lethal, and they were loyal. But when we arrived, Dario told them to hang back. If this is an ambush, he told Marco, you get Ravenna out, no exceptions. That is a direct command. We entered the building by ourselves. The factory was a terrible space filled with deep shadows and strange, hollow sounds. The noise of our own footsteps was as loud as gunshots. Dario Centuri. A voice called out from the darkness all around us. The man who breaks every rule. You actually came. Where is she? Dario's hand found mine and squeezed it tight. Where is Gabriella? A brilliant light suddenly flooded a corner of the factory. Gabby was bound to a chair with tape over her mouth. She looked petrified, but she was alive and seemed unhurt. Gabby! I cried out, moving toward her. Dario pulled me back. Not yet, he whispered. A man emerged from the shadows. He was older and looked worn down, but his eyes were identical to Dario's. Hello, son. Dario went completely still. Impossible. You are dead. I saw you die. You saw me bleed. The man, Dario's father, offered a tiny smile. But I was always very hard to put down. You of all people should know that. This cannot be happening. Oh, it is very real. He walked over to Gabby and put a knife to her cheek. And now, you are going to repay me for what you took, for stealing my empire, my name, and my entire legacy. You do not have a legacy. Dario's voice was completely flat. You were a monster. I made sure of it. And yet here I am, returned from the dead, and I am ready to take back what is mine. The knife traced a line on Gabby's cheek. She whimpered behind the gag. I think I will start with the people you love. Do not lay a hand on her. Or what will you do? His father let out a laugh. Kill me a second time? I do not think so. Because this time, if I die, she will die right beside me. My men have their instructions. If there is any sign of trouble, any hint you might cross me, your sister-in-law will die screaming. What do you want? I want everything you stole, the business, the land, the power. He pressed the knife in harder. A thin line of blood appeared on Gabby's skin. And your life. But I am a man of reason, so I will let you choose. What choice? Your empire or the women you care for? He pointed the knife at Gabby, and then he pointed it at me. Give me back everything that belongs to me, and they can go. If you refuse, I will end them both, right in front of your eyes. A heavy silence fell over the room. I could see Dario's mind racing, looking for an escape. There is no escape, son, his father said, reading his thoughts with ease. There is no clever scheme, no rule left for you to break. This is just simple math. What matters more to you? Dario's hand squeezed mine one last time. Then he let it fall. Take it, he said. You can have it all. The business, the territory, all of it. Just let them go. Dario? No. I started to object. Be quiet. He refused to look at me. He could not. You have my word. I will sign everything over to you this evening. Just let them go. His father smirked. You have become soft. Love has made you into a weak man. Maybe it has. Do we have an agreement? We do. His father nodded to a figure in the shadows. Let the sister go. Rough hands untied Gabby and gave her a shove in our direction. She ran to me and collapsed into my arms, crying. Now release the girl, Dario said. Well, about that. His father's smile turned into something cruel. I lied. The gunshot exploded through the air like a crack of thunder. Dario went down. No. A scream tore out of my throat. He fell to his knees as a dark stain of blood spread over his shirt. His father stood over him, holding a pistol that was still smoking. Did you actually believe I would let you live? He laughed. Not after what you did to me. I have been planning my return for years. The business was never the prize. I wanted revenge. Dario coughed up blood. He looked at me, his eyes already losing their light. "Run," he whispered. The factory descended into chaos. Marco and his men stormed inside, their guns firing. Dario's father's men fired back. The huge room became a battlefield. I pulled Gabby down to the floor as bullets flew over our heads. Through the smoke and shouting, I saw Dario crawling, trying to make his way to us. He was still alive, but just by a thread. "Ravenna," he said, reaching for me. "I am so sorry. I am so very sorry. Do not you dare die on me now." I scrambled to his side and pressed my hands to the wound. Blood streamed from between my fingers. There was too much of it. "Stay with me. Please, you have to stay with me. I love you." He forced out the words. "I have always loved you, from the first night we met. I love you too. That is why you cannot go. You just cannot." His eyelids started to close. "No, Dario." Marco appeared, lifting Dario as if he weighed nothing. "We need to leave, right now." He carried Dario toward the only exit. I grabbed Gabby and we ran. The factory exploded behind us, a giant fireball lighting up the night. We made it to the cars. Marco carefully laid Dario in the back, then drove like the devil himself was chasing us. "A hospital," I begged him. "He has to see a real doctor." "That is impossible. They will ask too many questions." Marco's expression was hard. "I know someone. A doctor who stays off the grid. She can fix him." I rested Dario's head in my lap, my gaze locked on the faint rise and fall of his chest. "Do not leave me," I whispered, my tears falling onto his face. "Please do not leave me. I will not survive this without you. I need you. Please." For just a second, his eyelids fluttered. "Little flower," he whispered. "I told you I would break the rules." And then he was still. Dario's life stopped at 11:47 at night. His heart did not beat for 43 seconds. I know the exact time because I counted every single one. The underground doctor, a woman named Sophia with steady hands and no questions, worked for 3 hours to bring him back. I fell apart completely, and Gabby had to hold me. Marco was a statue by the door, his own grief a silent, heavy thing. I held my breath when Sophia finally came out of the temporary operating room, her scrubs dark with blood. "He is alive," she said. My world went black. Dario opened his eyes 3 days later. I was there beside him. I had not moved, sleeping in a chair next to the bed, my hand holding his, trying to pull him back to me with sheer will. "Ravenna," his voice was a weak, damaged sound. "You are real. I am real." I lifted his hand to my lips. "You scared me. I am sorry." He tried to smile, but it was a weak effort. "My plan did not involve me dying. You did not die. It was close enough." He looked around the small secret apartment Sophia used for her patients. "My father? Marco took care of it. He was in the factory when it went up in flames." A wave of different emotions crossed Dario's face. Relief, sadness, acceptance. "Good. Gabby is safe. She is here with us. We have had a lot of time to talk. She does not hate you anymore. It is hard to hate a man who almost died saving your life." Dario closed his eyes. "I was not the one who saved her. I was the one who fell for a trap. You walked into that trap for me, for us." I carefully sat on the bed, staying away from his injuries. "You were willing to give up everything for me. It was not enough. It was more than enough." I cupped his face in my hands. "You loved me so much that you let your entire world, all of your power, everything you built, burn to ashes. That is the very definition of everything, Dario. For 43 seconds, I had lost you." So he did remember it. The darkness, the complete emptiness. But I came back, still not good enough. His hand came to rest on my waist, his touch surprisingly soft for someone so weak. "I need to be stronger, smarter, no more mistakes. There will always be people trying to hurt us. Then I will destroy every one of them." He opened his eyes, and the fire inside them stole my breath. "Anyone who threatens you, anyone who even thinks about hurting you. I will burn this whole city to the ground before I let anyone take you from me again." That kind of promise should have made me afraid. Instead, it felt like I was finally home. "Then I guess we are both lost causes," I whispered. "We always were. Little flower." His kiss was gentle and cautious, like I might break. I kissed him back with all my strength. "I am not fragile. I know. You held on to my soul when my body was quitting. There is nothing fragile about that." Over the next week, Da'ario's recovery was painful and slow, but he was recovering, and as his strength returned, he began to put his world back together. Marco found the men who were still loyal, soldiers who were waiting for a chance to rise up against the old organization run by Da'ario's father. They worked from the shadows to bring down the last parts of the Ghost's empire. My bond with Gabby grew stronger. She saw the way Da'ario's gaze followed me, the way he touched me like I was the most precious thing in the world, even at his weakest. She heard him wake up from nightmares shouting my name. "Do you really love him?" she asked me late one evening. "Yes." "And he loves you?" "Yes." "In that case, I will have to learn to live with it." She hugged me. "Just promise me you will be safe. This world is not good to women like us." "I know, but you are staying. I am staying." On the 7th day, Da'ario was on his feet. On the 8th, he was creating plans. On the 9th, he was ready to kill again. On the 10th day, he took me into a private room and locked the door. "I have something for you." He held out a small velvet box. My heart stopped. "Dario, I know this is fast. This is totally insane, I know. But I was dead, Ravina. I was gone and I came back. And in those 43 seconds of nothing, all I could think about was how I had never really made you mine. Not for the world to see." He opened the box. A ring was inside. It had a black diamond. It was beautiful and dark, and absolutely perfect. "Marry me," he said. "Not because it makes any sense, and not because it is a good idea. Marry me because I love you, and I am a selfish man, and I need everyone on this earth to know you belong to me." My brain told me it was too soon. It told me we barely knew each other. It told me to be smart. Yes. He slid the perfect ring on my finger. Then he kissed me like a man who had just been given a second chance at life. "Mine," he whispered against my lips. "Yours," I promised. He was gentle when we made love, even with the fierce hunger in his eyes. He moved carefully, his body still healing, but his need to claim me was undeniable. Later, lying tangled in the sheets, he told me his story. When I was just a boy, my father would beat me. He said I would never be strong enough for anyone to love. He told me I came into this world weak, a broken thing unfit for this life. His fingers drew lazy circles on my skin. I have spent every moment since that day proving him wrong. I built an empire, I became a monster, and I never showed a single person my weakness. You are not weak, but for you, I am. He gently tilted my chin up to meet his eyes. You are my weakness, Ravina. You are the only one I have. But I am not going to fight it anymore. I am going to embrace it. Loving you makes me deadlier than I ever was. How is that even possible? Because now I have something worth killing for, and something worth dying for. A predatory smile crossed his face. My father thought love would make me soft. He was wrong. Love made me a god, made me a... Then we are both gods. Yes, he murmured, kissing me again. But we are gods who rule side by side. That night, he laid out his new vision for me. He described how he would rebuild everything, only this time, bigger and stronger than it was before. He would make certain that our safety was guaranteed. And I worked with him on the plans, because I was not the terrified girl from the alley anymore. I was Dario Centuri's queen, and a queen does more than just stand beside her king, she helps him conquer. Our wedding was on a cliff that overlooked the Mediterranean Sea. The event was small and intimate. The only guests were Marco, Gabby, Sophia, and a handful of Dario's most trusted men. I wore a white gown, and Dario was in a black suit. The symbolism was clear to everyone. "I never thought this day would come," Marco said, standing next to Dario as his best man. "You, finally settling down." "I am not settling down." Dario's eyes were fixed on me as I walked toward him. "I am taking what is mine." The ceremony was short. Dario had written his own vows. "Ravenna Fior," he started, taking both of my hands. "I could promise to protect you, to cherish you, and to love you for the rest of my days. But you know all that already. So I will promise you the truth. I am a monster. I am a killer. I am a man with blood on his hands and a black soul. I will never be a good man, and I will never be gentle, but I will be yours, always, without a single doubt. And anyone who dares to come between us will learn exactly how monstrous I can be." The priest looked nervous. Gabby seemed concerned. I just smiled. "Dario Santo," I replied. "I could promise to be a good wife, to be obedient and quiet. But we both know that would be a lie. So let me promise you this. I see your darkness, and I am not afraid of it. I see your demons, and I will help you feed them. I will stand with you through all the violence and chaos, and my love will be yours until the world itself burns out. Which, given who we are, might be very soon." Dario's laugh echoed across the cliffside. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the priest said in a rush, as if he wanted to escape. "You may." Dario was already kissing me before the words were even finished. It was a kiss of ownership, deep and possessive. When we broke apart, I was his wife, and he was my husband. The reception was held at Dario's penthouse. He was set on returning to the city to reclaim his throne. "We are done hiding," he had told me. "Let them all see us. Let them understand." So we walked into that penthouse like we owned the world, because at that moment, we did. Our enemies were gone. Our territories were safe. Dario's empire was more powerful than ever, and I was at its very center. During the celebration, Gabby pulled me away for a moment. "Are you happy?" she asked. "Yes, I am. I really am." I looked over at Dario, who was talking to Marco, but whose eyes kept finding mine. "I know this is not a normal life. I know most people would condemn it, but he is my entire world. Then I am happy for you." She hugged me tightly. "Just promise me you will not lose yourself in his world." "I am not going to lose myself." I pulled back and gave her a smile. "I am just becoming someone new." As midnight approached, Dario pulled me toward our bedroom. Finally, he growled, pressing me lightly against the door. "I have been waiting to get you alone all day. We are married now. You will have me alone every day for the rest of our lives. That is not long enough." He kissed my neck. "I want every second, every breath, every single beat of your heart." He was hungry, almost desperate, as he removed my clothes with a slow reverence, as if I were something precious. "You belong to me now," he whispered against my skin. "Legally, completely, forever. I have always been yours, but now the world knows it." He carried me to the bed and made love to me as if he were burning his name into my very soul, and maybe he was. Afterward, wrapped in his arms, he told me his final secret. "I had a vision," he said, "in those 43 seconds that I was dead." "What did you see?" "It was you, with a little girl. She had your eyes and my smile. We were in a garden. You were laughing." He touched my cheek gently. "I want that with you. A life that is separate from all of this bloodshed and violence. Can people like us really have that? I will make it real." His hand moved down to rest on my stomach. "I will burn down the world for you, for our family, and build a new one from the ashes. You are talking about children. I am talking about everything. a life, a legacy, something more than just territory and power. I kissed him. Then let us build it together. 6 months later, I was standing in a hospital bathroom, staring at a pregnancy test. It was positive. Dario was in the middle of a meeting. I called Marco. Find him and bring him here at once. This is critical. The boss is meeting with the Calabrese family. I do not care if he is in a meeting with the Pope. Bring him to me now. 20 minutes later, Dario burst into the room. Pure panic was in his eyes. What happened? Are you hurt? Did someone do this to you? I simply held up the test for him to see. His eyes grew wide. We are pregnant, I whispered. A moment of silence passed. Then a laugh erupted from him that was honest, joyful, and completely wild. We are having a baby. He pulled me into his arms and spun me around. We are having a baby. Are you happy about this? Happy. He gently placed me back on my feet and held my face with unsteady hands. Ravenna, I am terrified. I am completely in over my head, and I am happier than I have ever been in my entire damn life. Tears started to stream down my own face. I thought you might be. I was not certain you were ready for this. I have been ready since the moment you agreed to marry me. He dropped to his knees and pressed his forehead against my stomach. Hello, little one. Your father is a monster, but I will become a hero for you. I promise. I ran my fingers through his hair. This fearsome man was brought to his knees by the hope of a new life. What if they decide to target our child? I voiced the question that had been haunting me since I saw the 2 lines. What if your enemies decide to come for us? In that case, I will eliminate every last one of them. He looked up, and the devotion in his eyes was matched only by the certainty of his violence. Every single one. I will make this world safe for you and for our child, even if I have to cover the streets in red to achieve it. Dario, I am being serious. He got to his feet and drew me close. No more negotiating. No more playing by the rules that other men created. Our child will have a secure childhood, filled with love and untouched by the demons that tormented me. How? By eliminating every threat before it can materialize. His smile was frightening. And our work begins tonight. He was not speaking in metaphors. In the 3 months that followed, Dario systematically dismantled every rival group. He did not achieve this with open war, but with meticulous planning, acquiring their companies, and presenting them with offers they could not turn down. And the ones who did turn them down simply disappeared. I should have been horrified by all of it. I should have demanded that he stop. But I supported him instead. I went to meetings with my hand resting on my growing stomach and watched men twice my age look away when I smiled. I learned the language of power, of intimidation, and of deliberate force. Gabby was appalled. You are pregnant. You need to be resting. And do what? Not safeguard my own family. I looked her directly in the eye. This is the world I inhabit now, Gabby. I am not a powerless girl any longer. I am Dario's wife, the mother of his heir, and I will take any action required to guarantee our safety, even if it requires becoming like him, especially if it requires becoming like him. She could not understand it. How was that possible for her? She had never held real power, never felt the rush of watching your opponents bend to your will, and never loved someone so deeply that she would become a monster for them. The baby was born during a stormy October night. Dario remained by my side for the entire 23 hours of labor. He held my hand, murmured words of support, and looked at me as though I were performing a miracle. When our daughter finally made her entrance, screaming her fury at the world, Dario wept. She is perfect, he whispered as a nurse handed her to him. Just look at her, Ravenna. She is absolutely flawless. I had never seen him act so gently. This man, who had ended lives without a second thought, was cradling our daughter. He held her as if she were made from starlight. What should we name her? I asked. He glanced at me, then down at our daughter, and then at the storm raging outside. Luna, he said. For the moon that led me to you on that very first night. Luna Santo. Luna. I repeated the name out loud. It was perfect. Hello, Luna. Welcome to this beautiful and terrible world we inhabit. Her tiny hand closed around Dario's finger, and I saw my husband, the man who defied all the rules, the monster, the king of the Naples underworld, completely surrender. I will give you anything you could ever want, he swore to her. The world, the stars, anything you wish for. Perhaps you can begin with a savings account for college, I teased, feeling drained but content. College fund, empire. It is all the same. He kissed Luna's forehead, and then he kissed me. Thank you for giving this to me, for giving me her, for choosing to stay with me despite everything that I am. I would choose you 1,000 times over, even knowing the things I have done, especially because I know the things you have done. He smiled. In that case, we are both truly lost. Happily. Luna's christening was the most significant event of the year. Every family in Naples was in attendance. Some were present to demonstrate their respect, while others came to observe. They wanted to learn if fatherhood had made Dario weak. They got their answer when Dario made his speech. My daughter, he said, holding Luna while I stood at his side, is the beginning of something new. A future that is not based on the failures of the past, but on the foundation of family, of love, and of unconditional loyalty. His eyes swept across the room. And anyone who threatens her, or even thinks about using her as a piece in a game, will find out that becoming a father has not made me gentle. It has made me utterly unforgiving. The message was clear. If you brought harm to his family, you would not simply be killed. You would be made to wish for it. That evening, long after the guests had departed and Luna was sleeping soundly in her room, Dario found me on the balcony with a view of Naples. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "I was thinking about that first night in the alley behind your club." I leaned back into his hold. "If you described this life to me all those years ago, I would have called you a liar." I turned to look at him. "Do you ever have regrets?" "Dario Santori, you broke every rule for my sake. You showed me a world I never knew could exist. You taught me how to be strong, how to be brave, how to be fierce. You unlocked that on your own. All I did was give you the key. No, you gave me the courage. I brought my lips to his. And I am never giving it back." "Good." His hands found my waist. "Because I need you beside me, not a step behind me. You are my equal, my queen, my entire world." He confirmed it. "You are everything to me. You walked into my world so fragile and innocent. Look at the woman you are now. They fear you. They respect you. You are powerful. Is that what you wanted when you first saw me?" "No." He brushed a loose strand of hair from my cheek. "I wanted to possess you, to own you. I planned to shatter you and then rebuild you just for me. But I see it now. You were never supposed to be broken." His smile was soft. "You were meant to break me. And you did, little flower. You tore down every wall I ever built. You ruined every code I lived by. And you gave me something I never thought I would have." "What is that?" "A reason to live for something more than revenge and power." He glanced toward the nursery. "I have a family, a future. I have hope." Tears started to well in my eyes. "I am making you soft." "Never." But his kiss was gentle. "I am only learning that some rules are meant to be broken. And you? You broke every single one of mine." 5 years later, our daughter Luna was racing across the garden. Her dark hair flew behind her as she laughed. A playful Marco was right on her heels. "Uncle Marco, you are too slow." "I am an old man, Piccolola," Marco yelled back, a wide grin on his face. I watched them from the terrace. One hand rested on the curve of my belly. We were having another child, a boy, due in a month. Dario stepped out of his office. His eyes found me, and a smile lit up his face. "How are my 3 favorite people?" He kissed me, then lowered himself to kiss my stomach. "Are you giving your mother trouble in there, Filio?" The baby gave a kick, as if to answer. I laughed. "He is your son, without a doubt." "Good. Luna will need a brother to look after her." "Luna does not need anyone to look after her. We have been training her since she could stand." True. Our daughter could already read a room for threats, analyze body language, and charm information out of adults twice her age. She was her father's daughter through and through. Still, Dario stood and wrapped his arms around me. "I want them to have what I never did. They should have each other, and a real family. They will." I relaxed into his hold. "We have made sure of it." Naples was different under Dario's rule. It was smarter, not just more brutal. He had moved the family into legitimate businesses, keeping only the most profitable of the old ways. He had kept his word. He built a world where our children could grow up safe. Mama, Papa. Luna ran over, breathless. "Uncle Marco said I can learn to shoot next year. Can I please?" Dario and I shared a look. "We can discuss it," Dario said. "That is a yes." Luna hugged us both and then sprinted away. I remarked, "She is so much like you. She is perfect." Dario took my hand in his. "They both will be." "Are you happy?" I had to ask. "I know you gave up so much. The power, the reputation, the control. I gave up nothing." He turned me to face him. "I gained everything. I have a wife who is not afraid to challenge me. I have children who give me a reason to wake up. I have a life worth living, not just surviving. Even when I argue with you in front of everyone." He smirked. "Especially then. Watching you destroy a rival family's proposal when you were 7 months pregnant was the hottest thing I have ever seen." I laughed. "You are insane. I am in love. There is a difference. With you, is there?" "No." He kissed me deeply. "With you, insanity and love are the same thing. I would not have it any other way." That night, long after Luna was asleep and the house was quiet, Dario and I were in the nursery we had prepared for our son. "What are we going to name him?" I asked. Dario thought for a moment. "Marco. For the man who saved my life and who has been protecting our family this entire time. Marco Santori." I tested the name out loud. "I like how that sounds. He is going to hate it. That is too much to live up to. Then he will learn to live up to it. Just like his father did." Dario pulled me close. We stood together in the quiet room, bathed in the soft glow of star-shaped nightlights. "I love you," he whispered. "More than power, more than this empire, more than my own life." "I know." I kissed him back. "You prove it to me every day." "Do I? You changed the world for me, remember? You let go of everything you thought was important, and you found what actually matters." "And what is that? This?" I motioned to the nursery, to our home, to this life we built, a family and love, a future built on something other than fear. "You make me sound like some kind of hero." "You are not a hero." I smiled. "You are still a monster. You are still dangerous. You are still the man who would burn down the world to keep us safe." "You are damn right I would. But you are our monster, and that makes all the difference." He kissed me again, this time with a fire behind it. "Come to bed, Mrs. Santori, before I am tempted to take you on this floor. You are impossible, only for you." We left the nursery, hand in hand. Model, above us, stars painted on the ceiling cast a gentle light on the empty crib. It would soon hold our son, who was our family, our future, our whole world. He was created from bloodshed and shadows, and a love that had overcome every single obstacle. I entered Dario's world 7 years ago, a shaking, naive girl filled with terror. Now, I was his equal. I was feared, I was respected, I was powerful, and my life had never felt so complete. 10 years on, I stood at the window of our villa. We no longer lived in the penthouse, but in a sprawling estate on the coast. Our children could play freely here and watch the sunset turn the Mediterranean gold. Luna was now 16, gorgeous and smart, and already getting noticed by boys who were clueless. She knew 6 ways to end them. Dario had forbidden dating until she turned 30. She managed to bargain him down to 18. Marco Jr., who we all called Mark, was 9. He had his father's sharp mind but also a kind heart that reminded me of Gabby. His dream was to be a doctor. Dario was torn between being proud and let down. Our youngest was Sophia, named after the doctor who saved Dario's life. She was 5. She was untamed, brave, and her father's absolute favorite, even if he never admitted it. "Your thoughts are very loud," Dario said, suddenly appearing behind me. He was older now, with touches of silver in his hair, but he was just as lethally handsome. "I am just reminiscing." "About what?" "About everything. The alleyway, our deal, that first kiss we shared." I turned to face him inside his arms. "Look at how far we have come." He kissed my forehead and said, "Look at how far you have come. I was already a monster. You rose to become a queen. We became partners. The deadliest alliance Naples had ever witnessed." His smile was full of pride. "Now, even the families in Rome fear the Santoris." "Good. My savage wife." He nipped gently at my neck. "You are still as ferocious as the day I found you. You would not want me any other way." "True." We heard Luna's voice coming from downstairs. "Mama, Papa, Mark will not allow me to practice my knife throwing in the house." "Because you nearly stabbed me the last time," Mark yelled back. "I missed you intentionally." "Children," I called down to them, "both of you take it outside right now." They complained, but they obeyed. Sophia appeared in the doorway, holding her teddy bear tightly. "Mama, Papa, can you tell us the story?" "Which story, my princess?" Dario asked, scooping her up into his arms. "The story of how you first met, the one where Mama told you she had never been touched, and you smiled and broke all the rules." I let out a laugh. "You really love that one." "It is romantic," Sophia announced. "It is like a fairy tale, but with a lot more killing." "That is one way to describe it," Dario said, and he carried her to the bed. I went to them, leaning against my husband as our little girl got comfortable between us. "A long time ago," I began, "there was a girl who did not know her own courage, and a man who did not know he was capable of love. And they found each other in an alley," Sophia added. "They did. And the man looked at the girl and knew in that instant she would change his entire world." "Did you know, Papa?" Sophia asked. "That Mama was going to change everything?" Dario looked over at me, and after all these years, the fire in his gaze still made my pulse race. "I knew," he said softly, "that she was different. I knew she was special. I knew she was mine. And I chose in that moment to destroy every single rule to have her." "And did you?" "I broke every last one." He kissed my hand, the one that still had the black diamond ring on it. "And I have not regretted that choice for a single moment. Even when she fights with you." Sophia giggled. "Especially when she shows my own fire." A smile formed on my lips as I rested my head on his shoulder. "Some people might call this our happily ever after." "No," Dario corrected me. "He said we lived dangerously ever after. For people like us, that was much better." Between us, Sophia fell asleep, dreaming of dark alleys, broken rules, and a love that burned brighter than any shadow. Dario and I remained there, our arms holding our daughter, our arms holding one another. He whispered, "Thank you." I asked him what for. For walking into that alley, for agreeing to my conditions, for loving a monster. I whispered back to him, "Thank you, for seeing who I really was, for choosing me, for rewriting all the rules. I would do it all over again." And so would I. We drifted off to sleep just like that. He was the monster, and I was his queen. He was the man who shattered the rules, and I was the woman who finally broke him. Below us, Naples glittered like a sea of stars. It was our city. It was our kingdom. It was our future, built from blood and fire, and held fast by a love that had walked through hell and returned. It all began 7 years earlier, with 6 simple words that changed my life. No one has ever touched me. Dario had smiled at that, his voice a quiet rasp. Then I will be the first, the last, the only one. He kept that promise, and I kept mine. To stand by his side, to offer him my heart, and to rule with him in both darkness and light. Until death do us part, and perhaps not even then. The end. Thank you for journeying through the darkness with Ravenna and Dario. Their path from a wet alley to a throne built on blood and loyalty shows us a powerful lesson. Sometimes, the most important rules are the ones we break for love. If their tale captured your heart, made you hold your breath, and caused you to fall for dark romance again, please press the like button. Subscribe for more stories where love is not a comfort, but a consuming fire. And post a comment below. Let me know which moment stayed with you. Their first kiss in the elevator. The time Dario stared down a bullet. The family they built from the ashes. Your engagement brings these stories to life. Send this video to anyone who loves dark romance and who understands that Mafia kings and queens do not want to be rescued, they only want their crowns. Until our next meeting, remember to live with danger, remember to love with passion, and never forget that the greatest stories are created in the space where darkness and desire meet. Go on and subscribe, like, and comment. I will see you in the next Forbidden Tale.